This is billed as a master class, and I think what that implies is that you are all masters already, and that I am somehow the supreme master who will raise your Jedi rating even further than it already is. So let's, first of all, pressure test that question. How many of you have started a company before? How many of you have, three, how many of you have started a venture-backed company before? One, okay. Okay, and so how, show of fingers, how many years in business have you been? Just quick show of fingers. Too many, 10, okay, 60, okay, fine. All right, so this is just a class, and I'm just going to be a regular person, and you're going to be regular students, because there's not much master about it, but that's fine. That might be more productive. The premise of this session today is how do you decide what startup you want to make? Or I guess invest in, but I think that's probably a different premise. Has any of you been a professional, or is any of you a professional investor? Okay. All right, so how many of you want to be, quick show of hands, start a company, start a company, and how many of you want to start a venture-backed company? Okay, a few maybe, okay. So what I know most about is starting venture-backed companies, so that'll be inflected in a lot of what I talk about today. But they're a special breed of company that is no better nor no worse, no nobler nor no more ignoble than other kinds of companies. But they do have certain qualities that are different from other kinds of companies. And then last show of hands, how many of you think of yourselves as wanting to do a social startup? Okay, so I'm going to be the least helpful for you, which entitles you to leave now, although you're entitled to leave for any reason. But we can wrap some of that in if you want today. There are people who are more expert on that than I am. So there are a couple things that I say that are to audiences like this when you're starting a company. This is going to be more of a chalk talk than anything else. Let's see if I can wrestle my way to a marker. And by the way, this should be as, I don't know if it's American or Silicon Valley or just whatever style is possible. You should just interrupt me at any time. I will not be offended by that or by the things that you say or ask, I think. And I reserve the right to not be interrupted at that particular time, but just put up your hand. So there's sort of two things. This is going to sound silly at first, but it turns out to be a little bit more powerful than it looks at first. So you can call it two lists or two parts of a Venn diagram. This has proved useful to a remarkable number of people who have become remarkably successful. There's two lists that you can begin when you're deciding what kind of company you want to build. And this goes for venture or non-venture, which is what am I good at and what do I like? Now, bear with me, because it does sound so non-mastery at first. This should be a secret list, because it should be a very embarrassing list if it's done well. What I like, I'm not talking about Michael right now, because my own list is secret, can be something as mainstream as basketball, or it can be something a little bit more invidious, like, again, I'm not speaking about myself, I like controlling people. I like being important or feeling important. It can be I like collaboration. It can be I like ice cream, which actually is very instructive. I do like ice cream, Michael, that's me, but I have not started an ice cream business. I'm a very good ice cream customer, but I'm not a good ice cream business starter. And then what am I good at? And then this list is as important, and it's not as embarrassing as it is humiliating often. It can be, I'm really good at talking on the phone. Or it can be, I'm good at making people feel good or bad about themselves. And the good news is you're the only person who ever has to look at this list. But somewhere in between the overlap of this list, somewhere between the overlap of these two lists is your company, almost certainly. Now, some people have criticized my writing on this and said, or added, it's also got to be profitable, idiot. Thank you, that's very helpful. Or, it's also got to be, practical, or, whatever. So you can add your own third fucking circle if you want to. Okay, I'm not going to object to your own circle, right? But what I've often seen, the most cardinal mistake, it sounds very easy, but the most cardinal mistake I've seen business entrepreneurs make is they just skip this basic step of understanding that you have to know what you're good at and you have to know what you like. Why? Okay, because you're going to do it a lot. And that is critically important. If you started your own company, as several of you have, a couple things. One, you do what you do all the damn time. It's occupying, it's consuming, and you have to talk about it all the time. And the best advice I ever got was from a guy from Coca-Cola on this question many years ago when I started my first company. When I was 36, I started my first one when I was 19. And he said, Michael, he's in marketing. He said, and he's working for Coca-Cola. So you'll see in a second like how amazing it was that a guy from Coca-Cola in marketing said this thing. He said, you're going to be saying the same thing so much about your company and about your business that by the time you simply cannot stand, but here's the thing, you have to get used to it, because by the time you simply cannot stand to hear yourself say it one more time, that's the first time anyone else is actually going to hear you. And this guy worked for Coca-Cola, which has, a gajillion dollar marketing budget. And that's how he thought at Coca-Cola. So that's true. So you're going to be doing this so long for so many times in so many ways that you just have to commit to understanding that you have to like it enough. So what does that mean? That's really, really, really important. It's really important to lean against your instinct to be opportunistic. So now is a great time to be opportunistic about social video, probably. Right? I mean, the hot thing this week is Periscope, right? And so you will see in Silicon Valley, from Silicon Valley to Israel to India, you will see probably in China for sure, the birth of not 100 but 1,000 startups that are Periscope clones. 1,000. And Periscope is not a very difficult technology. It's a hard technology to scale because that's an engineering problem. It's not a difficult technology, right? Video plus uplink, right? So the frequent mistake I see among MBAs specifically is being that opportunistic. They just sort of put their hands up for whatever is currently available. The second mistake I see MBAs make is the MBA business plan, which is you find someone you think you like in business school and decide to start a company with that person, which is basically doomed, okay? It's like starting a company with your spouse. One of the two things is doomed, the spouse or you or the company. Well, that's three things, but you understand that the marriage is doomed or the business is doomed. And the reason the business school business plan, the MBA business plan is doomed is that people understand it as opportunistic. You don't really know one another yet. You don't really like one another yet. You haven't been in the cut together yet. And you haven't seen the worm turn with each other yet. So you have to lean against this instinct. If you follow the paradigm of this design, to be opportunistic, and you have to understand that you're probably on a 5 to 8 year journey, kind of minimum. Now you may decide the thing is not worth doing sooner, which is fine, but you're probably on a 5 to 8 year journey if you have a chance of making it. And so 5 to 8 years is a pretty long marriage. It's a pretty long date. And you have to be willing to tolerate yourself and tolerate your topic for that long. So If you love food and you're good at eating, there are 1,000 things that can come from that, right? If you love basketball and you're good at talking, maybe you're, I don't know, a talk radio person. I don't know what it is. But the point is that you have to really, really, really own this. And by the way, this is an exercise that I do myself, some version of. Probably now I can kind of do it in my head. But I do some version of it every 6 to 12 months. And as my list starts to deviate from my current company at any given time, I have to start to rethink what I do. One of the only real virtues of business training is the condensation of difficult things into very simple precepts. And so hopefully this will be useful to you. The second thing I'll give you is that's sort of any kind of business. Second is sort of venture-backed startups. So there are only two kinds of venture-backed startup, and this is more germane to venture. First of all, because ventures is a very specific species, right? You need very, very high margins. You need the opportunity to grow fast. You need the commitment to grow fast. Venture is, as a general matter, not a good asset class. I'm sure you're familiar with that concept as an investable asset class. It's not a very good asset class. The reason it is a performing asset class is that there are, you can call them unicorn outcomes, you can call them decacorn outcomes. Decacorn is now a $10 billion unicorn, which is like pretty cool. I wish I'd named that, but my buddy named it a decacorn. And so there are these outsized outcomes now. That's the reason it's a performing asset class, because most venture businesses are not good. We'll talk more about that later. But there are only two kinds of venture-backed business, and you tend to be sort of one type of venture-backed entrepreneur or another. And by the way, you tend to find one type of venture-backing investor or another. So faster, better, cheaper is what it sounds like. You tend to have a known market, a known share of wallet, something that people understand already, and you tend to do it a lot better than anybody has ever done it before. And Brave New World sounds like it's sort of more ennobling, but it's not. It's just another type of venture-backed startup. Brave New World is you are going to either identify a wave that is coming and ride it, proverbially skating to where the puck is going to be, or you are going to make a new wave. And you're going to see how the world is changing, or you're going to make the world different, and you're going to capitalize on that set of changes and that set of differences. So it sounds sort of nicer, but it's not. The facts roll out like this. Faster, better, cheaper has, as a percentage of starts, more successful exits. It's still fairly low, because it's still in the world of venture, but more successful exits as a matter of starts, as a percentage of starts. They tend to be more capital efficient, because you already know what you're selling, right? You just need to sell something, a version of it that's better. You know to whom you're selling, you know your customer, you know what they're doing, you know why they want it. And it requires less money. It takes usually less time to build the business. But the outcomes tend to be smaller. There are two hugely exceptional, huge exceptions to this, which are Google, which was a faster, better, cheaper company, and Facebook, which is a faster, better, cheaper company. These are enormous mega cap companies. You could say maybe Alibaba is as well, right? They were, I guess you could say faster, better, cheaper, or in China would be the other parts of it, right? And then Brave New World has a smaller percentage of successful outcomes. It tends to be much more capital intensive because you have to find your way to the market you're building. You have to, in Silicon Valley, we do something called pivoting. We don't change our minds, we pivot. It's the same thing, but it sounds better when you're pivoting, not changing your mind. So you often have to pivot a couple of times. You have to discover your market. You have to discover product market fit because you're selling something new. If you're selling into consumers, you have to persuade them or entice them to understand that this is something that they never knew they had to buy before. Then you have to sell it to them. If you're in the business of selling to the enterprise, you not only have to persuade them, but you have to wait usually 1 or 2 cycles for them to create a budget for it. Okay? So you got to persuade them, then they got to persuade their boss, and the boss got to persuade the thing, and then wait for the budget cycle, and then you sell it to them. Ready to pounce, right? So Brave New World is more expensive. It takes longer, but the outcomes tend to be bigger. Most of the big companies you think of in Silicon Valley are Brave New World companies, whether it's IBM or Apple or eBay or Intuit or Yahoo back then. These are the Brave New World outcomes. And you have to decide which one you are. So I'm very much a Brave New World entrepreneur, but almost all of the angel investing I make is in faster, better, cheaper companies. Why? That's probably my own very small version of diversification in the world of venture, but also I tend to understand faster, better, cheaper very easily, the way most of us do. And Brave New World is a slightly different kind of CEO and founder. And this also goes to how you pick your team. So if you are a faster, better, cheaper entrepreneur, you're probably an execution monster. So that every day counts twice in faster, better, cheaper. Now, you should say that about Brave New World too, right? You should say that you want to use every day twice in any kind of company. But in faster, better, cheaper, you just know what you got to do. You got to just crush it, and you got to crush the enemy. You got to crush the guys you're disrupting. Right? The word disruption usually means you're referring to a faster, better, cheaper company. Workday, SuccessFactors, Salesforce, right? These are companies that were disrupting known businesses, and they were simply moving to SaaS, the cloud, an existing set of business models, right? So you want to be an execution monster. You want to know yourself to be an execution monster. You want to really, really be fastidious about not being distracted. So if you're someone who is curious but undistracted, then that's a good quality for you. If you have a lot of certainty about the market, consultants tend to make very good. How many of you sort of McKinsey, BCG, Bain types? One, only one. What did the rest of you do? You didn't start a company, you didn't work in consulting. What else did you do? Well, this is a business school, right? What did you do? Well, first the woman in red, and then you find.
I'm working in the Selçuk of Turkey. I also have a startup here actually, but it's in the very early stage. That's why.
Early stage is great. That's the best part. What did you do?
I started a business. I started it last year.
Wait, I asked everyone to raise their hands if they had a company, and 2 out of 2 had a company.
You said strategy. You said Bain, McKinsey, BCG.
No, earlier I said just do a startup. 2 out of 2. So there's only 3 people raise their hand. And you have a company.
I sold it last year, but also worked in strategy consulting for Deloitte.
Deloitte, okay.
Yeah.
How did you?
Mainly military intelligence.
And?
Former military, before this was implementing the Affordable Care Act in a health reform program.
What an interesting population. Just keep going for a second, yeah.
Education and nonprofit work.
This is like not Harvard Business School, where it's like, I was a consultant, right? That's basically the answer. I was in banking. I was a hedge fund person, yeah.
I was a supermarket, Tesco.
Wow, okay. Wait, keep going. This is totally, yeah.
I was in tech consulting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was at McKinsey and a number.
So you were at McKinsey?
Yeah, what have I had?
Oh, you did? Oh, you put it for So consultants have, for example, a very, very specific training, which is you really understand the landscape, you understand some, like 2x2 matrix, you understand what's going on, you understand what the products are, you understand what the fit is, and you can often find a sliver, a window of competitive advantage if and only if something turns out to be true, meaning we can get to this customer, we can get to this product improvement. And that sliver, when amplified, is many billions of dollars of total addressable market, and we're going to go through that window. So that is a very, very, very excellent and useful set of skills for faster, better, cheaper. It doesn't mean you're not able to do Brave New World, but that's a very useful set of skills. Brave New World, the first 10 people you hire may not be execution monsters. They may be what you can think of as sort of short burst execution monsters. They're one or two, maybe three agile sprint execution monsters. They work very, very, very fast. Their durability is not necessarily superb. They will get something up and out the door very quickly, and they will learn quickly. They will do this test and learn thing that we hear about all the time, the A/B testing thing very quickly. They will be intellectually honest about whether something is working or not. They will be a little bit more radical. They will look a little different. They are not better or worse, but that is the person you're looking for, or you may identify yourself as being if you're a Brave New World person. Transitioning from Brave New World to faster, better, cheaper is necessary at some point. And so one of the things that you need to be prepared to do if you get traction is understand that others in your market will find your traction too. They will find your traction attractive. And they will understand that you have identified a market that they want to then disrupt faster, better, cheaper. And you then have to become an execution monster. And that transition can be very difficult for some founders and CEOs, either themselves or because they have to understand they have to give up to a certain management team the reins so that they can then carry on and execute the company much better. But Brave New World's a different beast. And when you're looking for investors, you have to look for people who are not looking to run the same play that other people have run. There are probably about, of the 4,000 venture funds in the world, or in the United States anyway, which is probably about the same thing, there are probably 20 that invest in Brave New World companies. And these 20 are also the ones that make all the money. But they also invest in faster, better, cheaper companies better than the other guys as well. So they're very, very, very good at what they do. So identifying what type of person you are is very useful. And then when it comes to early stage, as in your business, there are really only three things that matter for an early stage venture backable startup. There's the CEO, that's you, or may not be you. So the CEO is the only human who matters at an early stage startup. So the other humans are so nice the way I call them humans. The other humans are important but not necessary. And you cannot have a good startup without an excellent CEO. And you can fail with an excellent CEO, but you cannot have, you obliviate your chance without an excellent CEO. So the qualities of the CEO are many, and we'll get to that in a second, but you have to have an excellent CEO. And so whether you are that person or you partner with that person, you have to be very, very clear about it. I've never really seen the kind of co-CEO thing work. Really, it's worked enough. And it's hard to prove the negative of what could have been had they not made that sort of lame choice. But really, the CEO is the person who matters. The second is the TAM, the addressable market, and there are probably about 10 really top venture funds that invest basically only on the basis of TAM. If you're really good at what you do, or you seem like you're really good as a CEO, and you've identified a really good market, that's enough. Like, great, we'll put $1 million or $2 million in the company, because the only thing that they understand at the early raw start, first money in stage is the only thing that's going to be reliable at a startup is that it's going to be different from what the PowerPoint slide says. So if you talk to the guys at First Round Capital, have you heard of First Round Capital? They're very famous first money in guys. They say the only thing that is reliable about every one of our companies is that it turns out to be different from what their deck said. And number two is we fund PowerPoints. They said, we fund PowerPoints. That's what they say. We fund PowerPoints, which is a hell of a statement, right? So they're just looking at you while you're doing your pitch. And if the TAM is enormous, they're like, okay, that's pretty good. And the last one that I add, and a lot of people don't even get this far, is your go-to-market. Do you have a notion that can connect? And this is basically the line between number one and two. do you have a notion of how you actually get to your scale? So it can be a user-based scale. It can be a customer-based scale. It can be a revenue scale. Do you have a notion about how to get there? Now, this is probably incompatible with being in Europe, by the way. And that's an important sort of statement that I'll make that may or may not be popular in this room, but it's going to be very instructive. It's probably impossible to start a successful venture-backed company in Europe. Why? There are a few guys who've done it, but it so stacks the deck against you. Why? There are two, maybe three markets that really matter for the internet so far. One is the United States, obviously, $14, $15 trillion economy. One is China, enormous economy and closed, and possibly Japan, although enormous economy but extremely hermetic and sealed into itself. If you have to offer others, you probably offer Germany, UK, France in that order. Here's the problem. If your stuff is very popular in Germany or in Turkey or in Israel or in UK, it's not clear it matters enough for the purposes of venture returns. It doesn't mean that you're not doing a great job. It doesn't mean that your product isn't good. But the hurdle rate for venture is so high that you have to have a market penetration that is 10x or 5x deeper in a market like UK, setting aside a Turkey, in order to have a venture-backable return. So the advantage that you have in the UK is that it's English and you can sell to the US market immediately. The guys who figured it out, though, the Israelis have basically figured this out big time, and the Estonians have figured this out, and the Finns have figured this out. You basically use your home market as a test market, and then you immediately start selling to the US. And it doesn't mean you have to have a person in the US. Often it may help. But if you want a venture-backable business, it's pretty much impossible to have a venture return and a venture outcome in this economy, in this set of markets. Now, a few guys have done it, like the Samver brothers in Germany have done it. Well, the way they did it was they immediately committed to 15 countries at once. And they did faster, better, cheaper in 15 countries. Now they're doing it in 50 countries around the world and seeing if they can create that kind of magic again. But the overhead that you have to pay to get 15 localizations at once is so high that you're really committing to something else. And also, they were doing it in Berlin in the 2000s when sort of student labor was free, effectively. So different set of things. Now, there are some non-economic things that look like venture that can make your startup more viable in other countries. I've seen this happen in Singapore, where there's a series of strongly non-economic incentives to keep businesses in Singapore and start them in Singapore, which may be a good place to start and sell from, but it's not a great market unto itself. But if you're doing venture and you're doing venture-backed, you have to really think very carefully about where you're targeting. And that's reflected, by the way, downstream in pricing. So European venture funds, which I think almost like 201 have never been successful. So I think like no venture fund in Europe has ever made money, because compared to like the S&P 500, like zero. I think the answer is actually zero. But it's a good lifestyle business for like German guys who want to live in Spain and live in the sun and talk about being venture capitalists. So what they do is they offer you like terrible punitive terms, for like €1 million for half your business or something terrible. And then you're enslaved to a group of Germans living in Ibiza. This is my notion of what these guys look like. And they own half your company, and they have discounted so heavily the value of your business. The one thing I will say is that this model may be broken, and I reserve the right to change my mind in a year if we see India work out, because it's about time for that to bust out. So we'll see if that works out. So if you have that possibility, that's very exciting. So anyway, go-to-market means, first of all, picking your market. which is related to TAM. Second of all, it means you have some notion of a product market fit. So Andy Ratcliffe from Benchmark, and then he started Wealthfront, is sort of the product market fit guru. Do you have a notion that seems to make sense about how you're going to get to your customer base economically? It doesn't mean you have a model. It just means you have a notion. And are you flexible as to ingesting new information? And are you committed to instrumenting your business to ingest new information on that set of questions? So those are the sort of three things that I think really, really matter very, very deeply. And then the last thing I'll say, hopefully this is, yeah, go ahead. Someone? No? Last thing I'll say is, how do you pick your team? Pick your partner. This one is very tough. So the military guys get this first, usually, and athletes, very, very serious high-performance athletes get this as well. You don't know the guy or gal until you've been in trouble. Okay, you guys know it better than most people. So I say you don't know him till the worm turns, is the phrase I use, and something's going to go badly at some point, right? So, I mean, maybe you have a magical unicorn story in which things don't go badly. I've seen business cases. I've been with other entrepreneurs who are watching business cases of companies we know or own or know well get told in august business schools, and they're told so cleanly, right? They're told with without any of the huge day-to-day, month-to-month, quarter-on-quarter errors and dips that we experienced all the time. And we look back and we watch the case, we're like, wow, that's a really great company. I wonder whose that is. It's like it has no relation to our actual story at all. Things will go badly, and they'll go very, very badly. And you're not going to know, well, not very badly, but they're going to go badly. They'll go badly routinely, day to day, whatever, good time, bad time. And you're not going to know what the person's like when things are in trouble until you've had some sense of that and some flavor of that before. So if you know what someone's like already when you're in trouble, that's a huge step up in advantage of picking that partner. If you don't, then you have to find a way to stimulate it. It doesn't mean you should create a fight, but you should find a way to advance your knowledge on that, because it's one of the huge payoffs. The last thing, guys, I would say is you have to figure out probably, and this inflects how you pick your startup, also inflects how you pick your team. Do you have some sense of what kind of cultural rules you think are appropriate for you and or this particular company that you're going to be building? So some sort of commentators believe that culture is pervasive and survives through businesses, and I don't think that's true. I think many CEOs are capable of having more than one culture. If you were running a gaming company, you might say we want a certain kind of look and feel versus an enterprise class SaaS software company, right? You're probably capable of more than one thing. But there are certain things that may be persistent for you. So one that's persistent for me, for example, is I need to be around positive energy. I can't be around Eeyores. Do you know what an Eeyore is? Like, oh no. And by the way, if you want anyone to be an oh no person, it should be your CFO. So if there's like an exception case, make it your controller, right? I cannot be around. I simply cannot be in the same room as that person. And I know that's my own limitation, by the way. I don't think that's a strength. Everyone has down days, but sort of Eeyores, by the way, Eeyores, like 98% of Europeans are Eeyores, right? So you have to find the 2% of people who are not in this part of the world. It's the particularly European disease, especially now. But you have to understand that by the way, this doesn't bother everyone. But for me, it's tough to be around because there's so many things that have to go right to make a company go that for the person next to you to be pointing out the 100 things that will go wrong today, you're like, yeah, no shit, I get it, I know. But give me something, give me a little energy here, right? And then I really cannot stand any kind of cover your ass behavior. I can't stand a second of it. I also cannot stand anyone who doesn't respond to or live in humor. Humor is a big device in my life and in my business. So those are sort of fundamental things that you can decide are useful, and you should pick you should pick accordingly your team and yourself that way. Okay, what can I do for you guys? I can keep going, but I've prattled on for a while. Yeah, identify yourself. Oh yeah, so these mics are not for us. The mics are for the recording, because at some point in your future, your grandchildren want to know what question you asked.
I should probably not ask this.
Who are you?
Rami, engineer. So,
Engineer, great.
Yeah,
What
boring
kind of
background.
engineering?
Electrical, mostly in renewables. I agree with your assessment that most Europeans are EORs, but I'd say most Americans are Tiggers.
Oh.
If you're using, and maybe there's kind of you need a good mix. So I guess in my experience, you need a little bit of, you need the Eeyore, you need the Tigger, you need the owl, piglet. There's only so much more I can go, but I mean, is that something you actively look in? I mean, would you immediately, I guess, discount certain people if they have certain qualities, or would you look for a healthy mix when you're setting up a company? Because I think it's good to have those checks and balances naturally in place.
I don't. It's like the good news is that you don't have to care what anyone else wants for your business. I don't hire EORs, and I don't let them get hired in my company. So, as I say, there's one exception case, which is you kind of want someone in finance to be kind of gray, you know, and I don't mean hair. I mean just kind of like it's always raining in their lives, you know. But no, you can't, in my company I won't do it. I won't allow it. I think it's an infectious, toxic cancer that will ruin my company. So, however, in your business, the one you start, that may be exactly the mix you need. I look for a different kind of diversity. I look for different there are a lot of vectors of diversity.
Don't you need someone who will tell you, I think maybe we should do this differently, or to point out some of the deficiencies that may be in your plan? Because I know why you would be very enthusiastic about something, but you may need someone from the outside saying.
So there's a difference between a no man and an Eeyore. Okay, so the opposite of Eeyore is not yes man, or yes woman, or yes person. So I think that's the kind of the question you're pointing up. So, look. So another sort of cultural rule in my company, for example, is direct deception is a fireable offense, and repeated polite deception is a fireable offense. So the answer is, no, you may really look too fat in those trousers, right? You have to be very polite. You have to say it with humor and kindness, but you cannot politely deceive anyone, especially me, in the company. When you get to company, I have 250 employees, so it's not huge by scale of person, but it's a reasonably large business. And even at 250 people, I'm often the last person to know something. And that's not a function of polite or direct deception. It's usually omission, or someone imagining that I would know something, or someone protecting me from knowing something. But no, I think you want to have some. I want to have some form of debate. By the way, there are very, very successful CEOs who do not want debate, who are total autocrats, and the world of company, setting aside venture-backed startup, admits of a lot of different personalities. Of many CEOs I've met, they tend to generally be sort of above average or better intelligence. They're not brilliant. Some of them are not hardworking, especially. They're kind of diligent. Some of them are honest. Some are not. Some are open-minded. Some are not. Some are deeply autocrat. I mean, Steve Jobs was an autocrat. He was an autocrat. And you can dress it up as much as you want. The man was an autocrat. Now, he listened to a few people, but this is not someone who was the sort of proverbial Silicon Valley type of CEO. There's effectively one product person at Facebook. One. Right? And so, we have a notion about what a certain CEO looks like, or a certain successful person looks like, and it's not right. The good news is your company can have whatever mix works for you. By the way, I don't think that my intolerance for EORs is a strength. I recognize it as a limitation, but it's my limitation. Anyone else? Yeah.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for the great talk. I just want to ask you, what's the most exciting business you've been involved in the last 18 to 24 months, apart from your own, and tell us a little bit about it.
There's one I can't tell you about yet because it's just that cool, and it's just not shareable yet. And I wish now, because it's a great and fair question, I could. Maybe a year from now, knock wood, I will be able to. There's two others I can tell you about. One is a business called MD Insider. I am on the board of only one company apart from my own, and this is the other one. It's based in Santa Monica. MD Insider is a medical data business, which is doing something like big data for medical insurance. So they've collected billions of medical claims, medical insurance claims, which is probably not sort of super sexy in the UK, but in America it's very necessary given Obamacare and so forth and so on. And they're digesting sort of efficiency data, transparency data, figure out who the best doctors are, who the most reliable doctors are, and they're as to outcomes and as to cost. So in the United States, you can still get sort of an $8,000 procedure, and 20 miles away, it's an $800 procedure, and it's not clear that the $8,000 procedure is at all better. Now, it may be, but it's not clear. So figuring that stuff out. The other one is a company called Scalar, SCALYR, which is just a total classic Silicon Valley company. I've said this to his face, so it's not like I'm going behind his back and saying this. He is like if you look, I mean, if they had to like central casting, if you give me a dork, this is the guy. Like, this is the man you look for. He lives in his house in Portola, which is a beautiful home, which is in Silicon Valley, because he's had 3 companies, 3 exits. The last one, you use their products. It's Google Docs. It was Rightly. It was his company he built, and they sold it, became Google Docs. He's never raised a dime until he started this company. It's called Scalar. He started 2.5 years ago. He just raised money early this year. It's a very quintessential Silicon Valley story. He is just a mega dork with one of his mega dork friends, also named Steve. They're both named Steve. And they are, literally on top of his garage, in the hutch on top of his garage. And you go on top of his garage, and he's got a 14-year-old son. So this is sort of, right? That becomes relevant in a second. Go on top of his garage, and it's like the room full of like Star Wars Legos on all the walls. I'm like, oh, those are your sons. He's like, no, they're mine. And he's an adult man, right? And he's building DevOps and SiteOps infrastructure, which does not sound super sexy. But if you know the company Splunk or New Relic or any of these companies, these are hardcore infrastructure companies that measure how your systems are performing. And he spent 2.5 years sort of in go dark stealth building this stuff. He pops up. He says, I want to raise some money, and he does. And I've participated in his company that way and in one other way. And so it's just one of these awesome things that it's so dorky. I mean, it's so dorky. Like everything about it. It's like even the product is dorky. Like even the way, unless you're a mega dork, you can't even use the product right now. Like it's that kind of thing. But I just think it's going to be enormous. And I love working with guys who are that committed, who are that technical. And he's this kind of person. His culture is very different, by the way. His culture, to give you a report, he's super engineering culture. They're now 3 people. And I think they're going to 4 right now. And every day at noon, they have lunch together. We'll see how big this scales. And every day at 3, they go for a hike together. And they talk about whatever. So that's their rhythm. And and he's going to make that last as long as he can. And they talk about what's going on, and they come back and they work. And he is unreachable from like 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. The guy is completely dialed in, right? He is zoned, right? Just puts on the headphones. Even when he's with his team, he's got virtual headphones on, not literal headphones, completely dialed in. It's a very different culture from the CEO of MD Insider is like a world-class cyclist. He's 52 and he's got a resting heart rate of 30 something. Like, you know, and he's like cycling and he's like, you know, a really good-looking guy, and like, you know, in LA and Santa Monica, he's tan, he's got this beautiful blonde hair, and he's got, you know, he's like that guy, 6 startups. Totally different person. So it doesn't take one kind of person to sort of broaden the question, but those are the two I think that are most exciting right now, apart from the one I can't tell you about. Yeah.
My name's Blake.
Blake, wait. Mike is coming to Blake.
Can you talk a little bit about the videos that you made on femto management?
Yeah.
Got a good laugh out of those. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, like what inspired you to do that, and did it have the desired
Have
effect?
you guys seen this femto film? So it's not going to make sense to most of the people here. So I made a parody of Silicon Valley, which you can look up at femto. It sort of became a thing, and so I'll just write it down for you since someone asked. If you want to watch. If you like it, I'm about to release another one. It's femto film, FEMTO. Does anyone know what that means? So, Silicon Valley is so full of shit. Okay, this is the basic premise, and it has no sense. I said this yesterday in my class, and I'll say it again. I'm sure it's going to be funny to some and less to others. If Silicon Valley shares a quality with the Catholic Church, which is that it has no sense of irony about itself. There's no sense of humor about itself at all, right? We're a very deeply religious place about ourselves, and we're extremely sincere about ourselves, right? And it's very frustrating. It's like, it's the only thing that you kind of walk around feeling like, I wish this weren't true about us. And anyway, people say ludicrous things, like they say, the Yo app is the beginning of one byte communication. I mean, that's just, remember the Yo app? Remember the Yo app? Right, so the Yo app was an app in which you sent the message, and the only message you could send was Yo. And then there's a very, very famous guy in Silicon Valley who says, no, you don't understand this. This is the beginning of one byte communication. I'm like, come on, you can't just paint some lexicon on this and make this sound more important and, like obscure it as cancer treatment. This is not. This is just a dumb app. Now that's okay. There's room in the world for dumb apps, but just call it a dumb app. It's not a question of its economic viability. It's just a dumb app. So I made a movie in which I played a very exaggerated form of myself, in which I argue, the argument of the movie is that I don't micromanage, I femto-manage. And micromanagement is, micro is the Greek prefix for 1/1,000,000th. And femto is the Greek prefix for 1/1,000,000,000th. So I manage people at the atomic level. And so then there's this video of me managing people like, at this close to the level, right? And putting my hands on there like while I'm typing for them and stuff like this. And so you can look it up if you want to. And so it went viral, kind of became a thing, won some film festivals and stuff like that. So hopefully you'll like it. There's a new one coming. Yeah.
I'm Laurent. I used to work in wind power in Canada.
Canada.
Yeah. And question, I guess, for when you're picking your startup, right?
Yeah.
The first reflex you have is to Google it and see if somebody's come up with it.
Oh, that's good.
And
That's a good question.
So you said, okay, you don't want to go with what everybody's been doing. You want to sort of be 2 years ahead of the wave. But at
Did I say that?
point, I mean, you sort of said you want to look at what the future looks like in 2 years and skate towards the proverbial puck.
That's the Brave New World business.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not faster, better, cheaper. Faster, better, cheaper is exactly going after the guys you find when you Google them.
So, but at which point, I guess, at which point does it become a faster, better, cheaper business instead of a Brave New World? Is it like, okay, is it 10 companies, or is it just, okay, well, I've heard of one company that's doing it, and so it still has its...
No, this is great. That's a great question. I wish I'd thought of that now that you asked that. So yeah, the first instinct of many entrepreneurs, and it's a responsible instinct, is to look up at Google and say, is anyone else doing this? The second instinct is to overreact to what they find. Okay, so I have written a sort of a matrix of how you identify actual competition versus notional competition. Actual competition is competition that looks like that it's in your field, it's in your area, and it looks like a well-executing, well-set-up company. And the indicia for that are pretty easy to imagine. In startups, they're pretty specific. You can figure out who's, what does the management team look like? What have they done before? Startups are more dangerous to you than IBM and Oracle in their backgrounds, unless this is an IBM Oracle type of business. People who've worked together before, more dangerous to you than people who are just coming together for the first time, unless they work together at Oracle or IBM or something like that. Unless, again, it is a business that is very relevant to that background. So like a group of HP guys who now want to do social commerce, not a threat to you. Okay? Who has invested in them? It's sort of a thing, but it's a signal. It sends a signal of something, right? Of quality, of implied competence. And then, what do they actually say about themselves? And what do they actually do? Now, the delta between those two things in startups can be enormous. So people who use the same buzzwords in my business would be reputation or privacy, but who actually do something else from what my company does, though they may say they do the same zone, or there's a signal-to-noise ratio to the consumer, which is its own set of problems, versus what's under the hood, you got to sort of get at that, either by signing up as a trial customer or just investigating it or learning or seeing what state of the state. Other sort of really interesting indicia, if you want real tactical stuff, if the contact us page is a form, not a real company. If the contact us page is a PO box, not a real company. If the entity is owned by an LLC that is in some bonkers jurisdiction, not a threat to you, right? So there are sort of many startups on the internet are basically held by holdcos that are offshore holdcos. As soon as you start to see structure like that, not a threat to you, not a real company. So that investigation is very important. Now, by the way, you have to be able to articulate the same thing to your prospective investor if you want an investor, and to your employees if you want to hire employees compellingly. You have to be able to explain all that to them, because they will get just as jittery as you did the first time you look online and say, oh my God. Now, if there's a whole bunch of legitimate competition, you're a faster, better, cheaper company, or you're simply betting that the market is not saturated or whatever else, and then you're a different kind of business altogether. If you're betting that the market is not saturated, you're probably not a very strong venture backable company, but you could still be a great company that you can own with only one or two other people. So that's responsive. I'm glad you asked that. That's a good question. Yeah.
Noel Goddard.
Hey.
Can you give me an example of where you've either walked away from an investment or walked away from a company that you started, and what were the trigger points for you making that decision? So what were the real red flags? Where did you go? We all have. I started a business, sold it last year, and throughout that journey there were times when obviously you have moments of doubt, but what's the point at which you actually feel, have you ever walked from a business or exited a business?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, if your basic premise turns out to be false, and there's no other premise that feels true and excites you, you got to leave. As an entrepreneur, as an operator, right? Because you can't just fake it for your investors forever. You can't fake it for your employees forever. Now, that decision should not be taken lightly, because you have asked people to sign up and so forth. So you got to evaluate that one. Yeah, look, investing is, I mean, you just have to assume if you're investing in anything that's venture back that you've lost the money as soon as you invested it. You just have to act that way. I mean, look, one of the things that so I didn't walk away, but I didn't walk away because so I was involved in a company. I won't name which one. You can figure out which one it is if you look and you really want to Google. But I was involved in a company, not Reputation.com, in which the original founder, I helped hire the CEO, and the original founder is a very, very, very successful white collar professional who's not a businessman. He's a bad businessman. And we hired the CEO, and about a year later, the original founder, and the CEO became a co-founder, but I'm going to call him CEO, and I'm going to distinguish him from the other founder. The original founder was charged with insurance fraud, with felony insurance fraud, and he was arraigned. So he was like charged. I don't know if he's actually arraigned, but he's charged. I don't know if really there's a meaningful difference. He's charged with insurance fraud, and so all of the term sheets, we'd gotten term sheets for investment, were hanging out there. They of course evaporated. And this is like a felony, like big jail time kind of thing. And I knew the guy reasonably well, and I was like, this just can't be true. And the CEO was like, yeah, I don't think it's true either. But you don't know. And not only do you not know, it's like, okay, the prospects of the company have now evaporated, at least from a financing perspective. So I told the CEO, I said, look, and I owned about a quarter of the company, I think, at the time, which is a lot to be sort of a passive person. And I said, look, this is a heartache for me, like 1 hour a week, but you live it 60 hours a week, and so I think you should just wind this company down. And he said, no, I don't want to. I believe in this guy, and I'm going to do it. And I said, fine. If you're in, I'm in, and I'll continue to back you, and so forth and so on. Which is probably more guts than wisdom. And then during the time that this man was charged with insurance fraud, the other co-founder of the company, or person, early employee or something, whom I had met once, who left like 3 years earlier and 4 years earlier, and before the CEO had ever, CEO never heard of him before, I think, finds a lawyer and sues the company for half the company, imagining that's worth, a gajillion dollars, which at the time was probably worth zero, right? And so now you have the founder charged with insurance fraud, felony insurance fraud, and some guy coming back from the gloaming saying, I own half of the thing, undiluted. I'm like, wow, this is a bad day, right? This is existential hair, right? So I called the CEO and I'm like, dude. He's like, yeah. And he stuck with it, and he stuck with it. I stuck with it. Now it turns out the charges were dismissed, but that was like 6 months, and none of you're in the penalty box now, and litigation continued. But I was ready to walk away. And by the way, I was really ready to walk away. I was not the brave guy saying I'm going to stick it out. I was brave only because he was brave. Not because I didn't believe, but because this is just too much. You have opportunity cost. You could be doing other things. I think I have time for one more. Yeah.
Hey, Joel Escher.
Hi, Joel.
If we could kind of go back to the initial sort of topic of the picking your startup and look at, once you've gone through your process with the Venn diagram and you've maybe got options, can you talk about kind of the paralysis of choice and triaging multiple what you feel are good ideas and sort of how to assess the process of picking what you do and what you focus on from that point?
That's great. So analysis paralysis is, which I think this was not your question, but analysis paralysis is fatal for an entrepreneur. And if that is your sin, which I think it is, I'm not saying it is yours, I'm not saying that's what you're implying, then you're probably not an entrepreneur. And what you need to be is part of an entrepreneur's close team, or you need to be the co-founder who is not the deciding party. There's still a role of great wealth creation and value adding to be done if you're that person. But if you know that to be true about yourself, that's not the job for you. Entrepreneurs, one of the qualities that is true among CEOs, they tend to be pretty decisive, and they're not always right, but they tend to be decisive. Mike Bloomberg is of the school that the leader's only job is to tell you where you're going and then to commit to it, and so that everyone knows. And even if the CEO is wrong, that's the CEO's job. It works out if you're Mike Bloomberg because he's always right. Okay, basically. But that's his mantra very strongly. Now, if you're just sort of not an analysis paralysis person, but you're a thoughtful person, which I think is your question, a thoughtful person who's wondering, then you should ask other things. Like I think the questions are practical. You probably want to associate yourself with the highest margin business you can. right? Now you may be choosing among service businesses that are lower margin. You may be choosing among restaurant businesses that are very low margin, but you probably want to choose the one that's most high margin. If you're in the zone already of this Venn diagram here, then margin turns out to be really damn important, right? And TAM turns out to be really, 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 really important, unless you're kind of a locally focused entrepreneur, right? Which you may or may not be. But if you're somebody who wants to do something very, very in the countryside in England, then TAM may not be the thing that's most important to you. You may be more of a lifestyle entrepreneur and make your profit that way. But the one thing that's sort of universally true is margin crushes everything at the end of the day. The other thing I would say is recurring revenue crushes everything at the end of the day. So if you can pick between recurring and transaction, I mean, those are two ways to very practical ways to very radically simplify your choice set. And then the third one that's probably useful is this is the moment in human history for CapEx efficiency. So unless you're Elon Musk and you're going to space, or you're in a renewables energy business, which is still very CapEx intensive, unless you're in energy or in space, as an entrepreneur, this is the CapEx efficient time. So pick the most CapEx efficient business. Unless you happen to be gloriously good at raising huge sums of money, in which case use that to your advantage and raise a huge sum of money and then differentiate yourself that way, right? That would be the other answer. Okay, thanks. I can linger for a little while. I hope this was fun and interesting. I love this stuff. And good luck with your businesses and with your spring. Thank you for the rain today. And we'll see you soon. Thanks.